My name is Evelyn Hart, and 3 nights ago, my father looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Starting next month, I'll manage all your money for you." He said it like a promise, but it felt like a warning. For 32 years, I've lived under his shadow, the man who balanced every dollar, every decision, and every dream I ever dared to have. I smiled that night, pretending to agree. But behind that smile, something in me finally cracked open. So when he came over for dinner, expecting another quiet evening, I made sure everything looked normal: the lights, the wine, the gentle jazz playing in the background. But on the table, next to his favorite glass, lay a single envelope. When he opened it, his hands stopped shaking, not from age, but from realization. That was the night control changed hands. I grew up believing my father, Richard Hart, could fix anything: cars, finances, broken fences, even broken people. He was a retired Air Force captain who ran his home like a command post. Precise, spotless, and efficient. I was his only child, and according to him, the one thing he needed to get right. After Mom passed away when I was 26, his protectiveness hardened into control. He started calling every evening, just to check in, but somehow the calls always ended with, "How much did you spend today, Evelyn?" He made it sound like care, but it always felt like surveillance. When I landed my first full-time job as a marketing analyst, I was proud of steady income, a small apartment in Ridgefield, and independence I'd fought hard for. But to him, that independence looked like danger. "You're young," he'd remind me. "The world's full of scams. You need someone who understands numbers." That someone was always him. At first, I let him help. He created my investment accounts, advised me on savings, and even set up automatic payments for my rent. It seemed harmless, thoughtful, even, but every act of help came with invisible chains. He'd correct how I tipped at restaurants. He'd glance over my shoulder at my phone while I paid bills. Once, at a family dinner, he told my uncle, "Evelyn's brilliant, but she couldn't balance a checkbook to save her life." Everyone laughed. I didn't. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, realizing something I'd never said out loud. My father didn't trust me, he owned me. Still, I couldn't cut him off. He was all I had left. So I kept smiling, kept saying thank you, kept letting him think he was protecting me. But every time he adjusted my thermostat without asking, or commented on how extravagant my grocery list looked, I felt my walls closing in. One afternoon, I came home to find a sticky note on my fridge written in his familiar, perfect handwriting. "You forgot to pay your water bill again." I handled it, Dad. Except I hadn't forgotten. I'd paid it 2 days earlier. That was the moment the truth settled in. I wasn't living freely. I was living in a golden cage built from good intentions, locked with love, and guarded by my father. And I knew it was time to find the key. Thursday dinners with my father were a ritual. No matter what happened during the week, he'd arrive at 6:30, sharp navy sweater, polished shoes, a faint smell of cedar cologne, and authority. That night felt no different. I made pasta, poured wine, and tried to convince myself this was just another meal. But when he walked in carrying a manila folder, my stomach tightened. He didn't even wait for the food. "Evelyn, I did a quick look through your accounts," he said, pulling papers out as if he were my accountant. "Electric bill up 20%. Groceries ridiculous. And do you really need 3 streaming subscriptions?" I froze, fork midair. "How do you know all that?" "You gave me access, remember?" He replied, calm and proud, like a man reciting good deeds. He flipped another page. "I also noticed your savings account isn't earning enough interest. I can move that for you next week." I tried to keep my tone light. "Dad, I can handle it." "Handle it?" He chuckled. "You're drowning in convenience fees. You need help." Real help. That word help landed like a stone. I'd heard it all my life. When I was 6, it meant tying my shoes for me. When I was 16, it meant grounding me for my own good. Now, at 32, it meant taking control of my future. I forced a smile. "You've already done so much, Dad. Maybe I should start learning to manage things myself." He looked up, offended, his voice dropping. "Evelyn, this isn't about learning. It's about protecting you. I'm your father, you shouldn't have to worry about this stuff." The pasta had gone cold. The room felt smaller, heavier, the air thick with unspoken words. I wanted to say, "You're not protecting me, you're suffocating me." But instead, I nodded. Sure, Dad, whatever you think is best. He was an Ottawas of cried. And to the onagrained she, it is of Gad. It is not le verses. He smiled, satisfied, completely unaware that he'd just confirmed my greatest fear that he didn't see me as an adult, but as property to be managed. After he left, I cleared the table, washed the dishes, and sat down at my small kitchen desk. The clock ticked softly, the same rhythm that had marked every silent surrender in my life. Then I reached for my laptop. My hands were trembling, but my thoughts were razor sharp. I opened a blank document, titled it Plan, and began typing. Step 1, separate finances. Step 2, new bank account. Step 3, consult attorney. Step 4, collect evidence of interference. For years, I'd let him write the story of my life. That night, I decided to start writing my own, and I knew exactly where the first chapter would begin, at next Thursday's dinner. I didn't confront my father right away. I knew better than to challenge a man who built his identity on control. The key wasn't to fight him, it was to outthink him. Quietly, the next Monday, during my lunch break, I met with Rachel Connors, a lawyer I found through a friend from work. Her office was small but professional, tucked above a florist shop that smelled faintly of roses and dust. She listened while I told her everything, the shared accounts, the monitoring, the accidental payments he made without my consent. When I finished, she leaned back and said, Evelyn, what your father's doing isn't technically illegal yet, but it's crossing boundaries that could become abuse if it continues. We can start by separating your financial ties. Completely, I said. He can't know until it's done. 8. Rachel nodded. Then we'll move quietly. Start with your main bank, open a new account in a different branch, under a new mailing address. Everything else follows. That afternoon, I did exactly that. By the end of the week, my paycheck was being deposited into a new account. My credit card billing address pointed to my office. I rerouted my insurance, utilities, and savings into what Rachel called my clean slate. But on the outside, I played the same obedient daughter. I still texted him updates. Paid my bills early. Thanks for reminding me. I even sent him screenshots of the old account, the one I'd left with just enough money to keep him from noticing. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji, probably feeling triumphant. At work, I stayed late each evening, filing digital copies of every bank statement and correspondence. The office lights dimmed around 9 p.m., and I'd be the last one there, a quiet strategist hiding rebellion behind spreadsheets. Every so often, I'd look at the framed picture of my mom on my desk. She was laughing, holding me as a baby. She'd always told me, don't let anyone, not even family, decide your worth. I realized that was the lesson my father had never learned, and the one I was about to teach him. One night, while drafting another legal document, I got a text from Dad. Dad, thinking we should merge our accounts next month. Easier to track everything. Me, sure Dad, let's talk at dinner. I stared at that message for a long time. My heart didn't race anymore. It was steady, cold, almost calm, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. I was prepared, and when Thursday came, I'd be ready to let him walk straight into the truth. I'd been quietly building line by line, signature by signature. By the second week, my plan was moving smoothly, too smoothly, maybe. That's when Dad's tone began to change. His daily calls became interrogations. Where were you last night? I tried your home line. Working late? I said. At the office again? Evelyn, that's not healthy. You're avoiding me. He said it like a joke, but his voice carried that sharp edge I knew too well, the same tone he used when one of his soldiers disobeyed orders. Then, one evening, I came home to find a letter from my insurance provider. It read, Policy updated. Co-beneficiary, Richard Hart. My knees nearly gave out. He had actually added himself to my life insurance, without my consent. The next morning, I called the company. They said the request came from a family representative who provided verbal confirmation. My father's smooth, commanding voice probably made it sound legitimate. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with every light off, the silence thick around me. I thought about all the times he'd told me he knew what was best. Now I finally understood what that meant: ownership. The next day, I met Rachel again. Her brow furrowed when she saw the document. This isn't just overreach, she said. This is fraud. What can we do? We'll report it quietly, Have the update reversed and flag any other attempts. But you should know he won't take this lying down. I sighed, rubbing my temples. He's been controlling me my whole life. He's not going to stop just because I asked nicely. Rachel looked me in the eye. Then don't ask. Finish preparing. So I did. I documented everything, the letter, his texts, even the calls. I bought a small voice recorder and started leaving it on during our dinners. I told myself it was insurance, just in case. But deep down, I knew it was something more. It was proof, not for a courtroom, but for myself, that I wasn't crazy, that this wasn't love, and that his control had crossed a line no daughter should ever face. A few nights later he called again. "Sweetheart," he said smoothly. "Next week, we'll move your paycheck deposits. I've already spoken to your HR department." I felt my pulse quicken, but not from fear. "That's great, Dad," I said, my voice calm. "Let's talk more about it over dinner." He laughed softly, unaware that he was walking straight toward the moment I'd been building. The trap was almost set. Thursday came dressed in calm skies and false peace. The air outside smelled faintly of lilacs, the kind Mom used to plant by our porch. I spent the afternoon cooking roasted chicken with rosemary, his favorite, and setting the table with quiet precision. The wine glasses caught the amber light of sunset. It looked warm, inviting, deceptively normal. At exactly 6:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. "Smells incredible," Dad said, stepping in, his voice deep and steady as ever. He placed his coat neatly on the rack and smiled that rehearsed fatherly smile. "You've outdone yourself tonight." "I try," I said softly, handing him a glass of Pinot Noir. He took a sip, nodded approvingly, and eased into his chair. For a while, we made small talk: his neighbor's new fence, my job promotion, the weather. Every word floated above the undercurrent we both felt but didn't name. Then, midway through dinner, he set down his fork and reached for the folder in his bag. "I've been reviewing your accounts," he began casually. "You've done all right keeping up with bills, but your investment returns are underperforming. Starting next month, I'll handle your finances. It's simpler that way." He said it like it was already decided, a man announcing an order, not offering help. I smiled faintly, folding my napkin. "That's thoughtful, Dad. But before you take over everything, I'd like to show you something." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what's that?" I stood up, walked over to the sideboard, and retrieved a brown envelope I had placed there earlier. My hands didn't shake. I laid it gently beside his wine glass. He frowned, glancing between me and the envelope. "What is this, Evelyn?" "Just some paperwork," I said, taking my seat. "I thought it might interest you." He slid a single sheet halfway out, his own name missing from every title, every signature line. My new accounts, my trust documents, my property transfer, all legally sealed and untouchable. For the first time in my life, my father's confidence faltered. "Where did you get these drawn up?" he asked slowly. "From my lawyer, Rachel Connors." "You have a lawyer now?" His tone cracked, disbelief giving way to irritation. "I've had one for weeks." The silence between us sharpened. The clock ticked once, twice. "You went behind my back?" he demanded. "No," I said calmly. "I simply took back what was mine." His jaw tightened. "This isn't you, Evelyn." "You're right," I said. "This is the me you didn't let exist until now." He leaned back, exhaling through his nose. The old authority in him was slipping, replaced by something rawer, smaller. "You don't understand what you're doing." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I replied. "I'm ending it." He didn't speak again for the rest of dinner. The only sound was the slow crackle of the candle between us and the soft, inevitable crumble of his control. For a long minute, the room was silent, except for the slow hum of the refrigerator and the faint hiss of the candle. My father stared at the papers like they were a foreign language, like he couldn't quite believe his own daughter had done this. Then, in a low voice that vibrated with controlled fury, he said, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" I held his gaze. "You didn't protect me, Dad. You controlled me." His head snapped up. "Controlled you? I raised you. I kept you from making mistakes that could ruin your life." I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples, but I didn't flinch. "And in the process, you made sure it was never really my life." He pushed his chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood. "You're being dramatic. You have no idea how the world works, Evelyn. I saved you from your own impulsive nature. You would have wasted everything if not for me. I stood up too, my hands trembling, but not from fear anymore. From rage. You don't get to decide who I am. Not anymore. His jaw tightened. Ungrateful, he muttered, shaking his head. You'd have nothing without me. Not the house, not the job, not that education I paid for. You're right, I said quietly. You gave me everything except the right to breathe. He froze, blinking. I could see him searching for the old version of me, the compliant daughter who would back down, apologize, smooth things over. But she was gone. Then, he sneered. This lawyer of yours, she's feeding you poison. You think a few papers make you independent? You're still my daughter. I can undo this. I walked over to the table, picked up the USB drive I'd placed beside the envelope, and slid it toward him. Then you'll want to listen to that before trying anything. He frowned, his fingers hovering over it. What is this? Recordings, I said evenly. Of every unauthorized call you made to my HR department, my insurance company, even my bank. All logged, all time-stamped. My lawyer has copies. The color drained from his face. You recorded me? I documented what you refused to admit. He sat back, the bravado in his posture collapsing into something smaller, almost human. You'd really do this to your own father? You did it first, I whispered. You took my trust and turned it into currency. You taught me that control is love, and I believed it, until I couldn't breathe anymore. He looked down, the papers trembling in his hands. For the first time, his voice broke. You sound just like your mother, he said bitterly. Always challenging me. Always thinking freedom meant disrespect. No, I said softly. She just wanted peace, and you never let her have it. At Sten he was, it might follow Ving. The words hung in the air like smoke neither of us could breathe. He set the papers down slowly. You think this makes you strong? No, I said, steady now. It just means I finally stopped being weak. He exhaled through his nose, shaking his head like a man watching a building he built fall to rubble. I was only trying to help you. And I'm only trying to live, I said. Then, without another word, he grabbed his coat, his movements sharp and mechanical. When he reached the door, he hesitated, glancing back over his shoulder. His voice was barely more than a whisper. You'll regret this someday. I met his eyes. No, you will. The door closed with a soft click. For several seconds I just stood there, staring at the space he'd left behind. My whole body shook, half adrenaline, half relief. Then the silence hit me. Heavy, real, permanent. I sank into the chair, the one across from where he'd sat moments ago, and felt the first wave of tears come. Not from sadness, but from something deeper release. I looked at the envelope, the drive, the cooling dinner, and whispered to myself, it's over. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I realized what power really felt like. Not control. Not revenge. Just freedom. The morning after the confrontation, I woke to the faint smell of cold wine and candle wax still lingering in the air. The table was exactly as we'd left it, 2 plates half-eaten, 1 glass untouched, and an envelope that now felt like a declaration of war. For a while, I just sat there staring at the empty chair across from me. The silence didn't ache anymore. It just existed like the aftermath of a storm when the world holds its breath. By noon, my phone began buzzing. First came a short message from Dad. We need to talk. You've made a mistake. I didn't reply. An hour later, I can still fix this if you stop now. Still, I said nothing. Then the next day, a call came from Rachel. Her tone was calm, measured the voice of someone who knew storms before they arrived. Evelyn, your father reached out to the bank and tried to challenge your trust documents. But everything's airtight. He can't reverse it. I exhaled slowly. So it's done? It's done. Legally and permanently. For a moment I felt a flicker of guilt. He wasn't an enemy in the traditional sense. He was just a man who couldn't stand losing control. But that didn't make what he did right. That evening, as the sun sank behind the trees, I walked into my backyard with a blanket around my shoulders and a cup of coffee warming my hands. The cicadas hummed. The world didn't look different, but I did. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. A final message from him. You've made your point. Goodbye. Just 3 words, but they landed like a stone in still water, quiet, final, irreversible. I set the phone down and whispered, "Goodbye, Dad." The rain started not long after, soft, steady, the kind that fills silence with rhythm. I sat by the window, watching it streak down the glass, feeling neither triumph nor sorrow. Just peace. But peace, I learned, doesn't mean the absence of pain. It means accepting that some wounds will never close and choosing to live anyway. Before going to bed, I opened my notebook and wrote, "Control is a form of fear. And fear, when disguised as love, can ruin everything." When I closed it, I realized I wasn't writing for him anymore. I was writing for me and for the woman I used to be, the one who spent her life apologizing for wanting to be free. In the quiet of that night, I promised her something simple: "You'll never have to ask for permission again." And for the first time, I believed it. A month later, I drove west until the city faded into open sky. The air smelled of salt and wind and something cleaner possibility. I rented a small cabin by the Oregon coast. Nothing fancy, just wood and silence and a view that stretched all the way to the horizon. Every morning, I brewed coffee, opened the windows, and let the sea air roll through the rooms like a baptism. No one called, no one checked my spending, no one asked where I was going or when I'd be back. It was unsettling at first, that much freedom. You don't realize how deeply control trains you until you're suddenly alone with choice. I kept expecting my phone to buzz with my father's voice, telling me what to fix, what to save, what to do next. It never did. Instead, there was just quiet, and the sound of waves, relentless and honest. I spent the days walking barefoot along the beach, picking up smooth pieces of driftwood, remembering the crafts my dad once made when he was still patient, still human. Sometimes I wondered if he sat somewhere doing the same, thinking about what he'd built and what he'd broken. One night, under a bruised purple sky, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the porch steps. The ocean was black and endless, the wind cool against my face. I lifted the glass and whispered into the darkness, "Here's to freedom, and to every woman who learned that love doesn't mean surrender." A single wave crashed louder than the rest, as if the sea itself was answering back. Inside the cabin, my old envelope, the one that had ended everything, rested in a drawer, sealed away like a relic. I didn't need it anymore. Because freedom isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about no longer needing to. I leaned back, listening to the ocean breathe, and realized I wasn't afraid of silence anymore. Silence meant peace, and peace, real peace, was something no one could ever manage for me again.